So hello again and welcome to video 3 on the How Public Relations and Communications Work Together series. And depending on how fast I go, I may decide to do video 3 and 4 together, but otherwise, if it's too long, then I'll break it. So we had done the first two videos where I was talking about what strategic communications is, what strategic public relations is, and what is traditional PR and old school. Please, you have to go back to those videos to see the definitions. I won't go through it again here. So, but one thing that we did say about traditional PR is that it tends to be more focused on spin and image, as opposed to strategic publications, which focus on, it's also like it moves more into the communication space, and then strategic communications is very much firmly in a structured and purposeful approach. And we'll see how this plays out in terms of the practice areas. The purpose of this video is for us to know the difference between the practice areas and to be able to identify when which area or where we stand when we're working, and in terms of what should we be doing differently. And why this is important, like I said, I have been in many conversations where because I work for a consultant. I own a consulting firm, and we work with a lot of clients across sectors, and we get into a lot of communications team. I'm able to see that the gaps that exist, many times, and the difference between the expectations that employers have or recruiters have, as opposed to what eventually, the gaps that are just present. That's what I would say. And a lot of it is because people do not fully understand the spectrum of the profession, and they think that one PR person is the same as the next comms person. It's not true. So a lot of the advocacy that we've been doing in SA is to try to help everyone understand the differences and know, if I'm looking for someone who is able to work in this way and deliver this kind of skill, this is what I should be watching out for. This is what I can expect. And if there's someone else, I'm looking for someone else to be able to active in another space. This is what I should be watching out for. This is what I should expect. And if I have somebody who is only able to or appears to have skills that seem more tilted in a particular area, what then do I need to do to expose him or her to experiences that will enable them to function in another area? So all of that, I think, just will help us work a bit better. So audience segmentation and targeting. For traditional PR, old school PR, most of the time it's focused on already identified stakeholders, people that already know. They're not likely to recognize or pay attention to others. They view the public through the lens of the key stakeholders and traditional audiences that they know. Again, we see this mindset a lot with traditional institutions and government and politicians a lot. They're like, initially when social media came out and people started talking, they're like, who is that person? Who is saying this? They don't pay attention. I think now they begin to pay more attention, but I still think that they view the public through the lens of the stakeholders that they know. I see this a lot. Like I said, the Nigerian government, the current government particularly, and even the past one, I think that is the problem they have in terms of their communication strategy with the people. They have not taken the time to understand the audiences outside of their own supporters, and they've bunched everybody under antagonists. They just, no matter what you do, it doesn't matter. So they're not taking the time to even understand. So that's a major problem. So their messaging speaks only and resonates only with their supporters, which is why people who are not their supporters, everything they say annoys them. So it's like a vicious cycle, because you're saying no matter what we say or do, they are against us. Yes, because you haven't taken the time to segment them, to understand them, and to target them. You're speaking only to your stakeholders, your supporters at every point in time. So you continue to say things your supporters already supported. They're going to support you guys. So they're like, yay, this is so good. And then people that don't support it, they're like, what the hell? What did they just say? What's that nonsense? Who did, So that's just a problem. It's a problem. And that's typical traditional PR, which is like, if anyone, I mean, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, traditional PR still exists today. Most governments are still running on traditional PR. Very few are running strategic PR, talk less of strategic comms. Definitely not in Nigeria. So strategic public relations takes a more strategic approach, identifies key audiences based on interest and influence. Yes. So if you're in strategic public relations, for that word strategic to even mean anything you're doing, that means you actually even know what the stakeholder management framework is. You know what a stakeholder matrix is. You have been able to segment your audiences based on interest and influence. Sorry, there's a random E somewhere there. Let me just edit it out because it's distracting me. Sorry, can I get you out? So there you go. Just yeah. So focus. Yeah, I probably was going to say something and then I lost the train of thoughts there. I forgot to put it back. So takes a more strategic approach and identifies key audiences based on interest and influence. It also uses the stakeholder management framework. But strategic communications, on the other hand, sorry. strategic communications is, sorry, I'm showing you what I shouldn't show you. My system seems to be moving. Responsible for identifying and targeting audiences online. Okay, there you go. So responsible for identifying and targeting audiences online, so offline. So they do all that segmentation, and everything. The audience segmentation and stakeholder mapping is a big thing in strategic communications. You don't even start any work until you know who am I speaking to, why, what do you want them to know, what do you want them to feel, what is their interest in what we're doing, what influence do we have, therefore what messaging should we be saying, what should we do before we speak to them, what have we done, it's a very strategic approach, very structured, very methodical. You don't just respond. You don't just go out. Oh, they're saying this, therefore, oh, just tell them. You first of all go back and interrogate. This thing they're saying, is it true? Who is saying it? How long has this been going on? What did we say in the past? There's just a whole lot that you say about that. And it's all based on you must segment the audience. We believe that you can't speak the same way to different people. You have to understand who you're speaking with, what's the history of the relationship before you decide what you're going to say. So very strategic approach to communication and audience segmentation. So now managing so stakeholder management, again, like I said, they viewed for traditional PR, audience and stakeholder the same thing. But for stakeholder management, for strategic public relations, it's focused on managing face-time and in-person relationships with identified stakeholders, ensuring smooth relationships, more focus on personal networking and relationship management. For strategic comms, I think they use it. So I would say strategic PR uses relationships and touch points to manage stakeholders. Strategic communications uses communications and messaging. So the focus for strategic communications is more on messaging and content than on actual in-person relationship management. That's what I will say there. Now, reputation management for traditional PR is more focused on image and spin, like we have talked about. That's the focus for traditional PR. It's all about image and spin. The concept of reputation management is not fully understood in this space. And many traditional and political institutions are like, that's where they are. It's the truth. That's what we see. I don't know who is going to organize a course for them to really get it, but it's a major problem for them. So, sorry, my cursor seems to be glitching for some reason. So, strategic public relations is focused on managing reputation and relationships with specific identified relationships, like I said, government, media, community on specific issues. Whereas on strategic communications is focused on managing the overall reputation, not just one person. It's focused on some stakeholders. Strategic comms is focused on managing the reputation of the entire organization, the entire institution, the entire everything. Whereas strategic public relations is focused on managing relationships more, in fact, reputation is secondary. Relationships and then reputation with specific identified relationships, e.g., government, media, community, investor, whoever, on specific issues or agenda items. But for us in strategic communications, we're focused on managing overall corporate reputation. Yes, we do specific when there are specific issues and there are specific crises. But even when there's no specific issue, there's no specific crisis, your messaging strategy, your content strategy, your reputation management strategy is to manage the corporate reputation as a whole. Even when there is no issue, there's nothing we're asking, there's nothing we're demanding. There's a steady state overall corporate reputation view. And most of the time, it's the comms specialist that then has responsibility of making sure that everything that everyone else is doing in the PR space, in whether it's investor relations, community relations, is all working together. So the communication specialist integrates the overall reputation management efforts of the whole company or of the whole organization. That's what the comms person does. It's not the PR person that does that. And of course, why the difference is that the comms person does that because the comms person will also rally the organization, the leaders, and the employees together in that reputation management effort, because everybody is involved in building reputation. Because if I'm saying something, if the communication strategy of an organization is saying some things and the employees are behaving in a different way, there's going to be misalignment. People will believe what they see from the employees and not what we say. So the comms person makes sure, make sure that we're saying what we're saying outside lines up with the way our staff are behaving and how they're relating with the with everyone else. PR people don't have a space in that. PR people can only speak on behalf of the organization. They have no control over what people in the organization do. But communications people, through internal communications, can actually influence and be like, and make sure, carry the staff along in that drive of whatever it is we're trying to achieve. Am I communicating? I sincerely believe that I hope that I am. So strategy and planning. And this is in terms of plans, your strategies, and all of that. So old school PR, of course, their strategy and plan is focused on, like I said, managing established relationships. So media plan, traditional PR plan, traditional stakeholder management plan strategy. They're not likely to have a digital strategy around any of this, if at all it will be minimal. For strategic PR, it's based primarily on the stakeholder engagement management framework. So event protocols, you have its protocol strategy, PR guidelines, media protocols, publicity strategies, in-person and digital. They will use analytics and AI to some extent to hone their strategy. For strategic comms, the strategy and the plans are based on strategic communications. In fact, a lot of plans, strategies actually. There's comm strategy, there's internal comm strategy, there's external comm strategy, there's crisis management strategy, there is brand strategy framework, so many frameworks. Even our courses when I add all our courses together, almost all of our courses we have, I need to count, there are about 5 or 6 frameworks that we actually teach on our courses, if I even remember, because there's reputation management, there's brand strategy, there's stakeholder management, there's issues management, there's crisis management, there's a whole lot of them. And of course, yeah, so there's a very strong focus on messaging, advocacy, influencing, and all of that. And in that strategic com space, you would use analytics and AI to a very large extent for your strategies and for your planning as well. So you take insights from analytics and AI. Now, in terms of measurements, traditional PR, they tend to measure activities and events majorly and outcomes to some extent. So for them, that we went to visit His Royal Majesty is enough. Of course, they will say what they wanted from the Royal Majesty too, but then that we had the fact that we gained access, that's important. So they measure events and activities, but there's not much attention to things like quantifying the impact or the reach. They're not likely to use digital analytics to measure. I mean, back in the day, we used to try and measure quite a bit, but to be honest, the measurements were not strong enough for you to build there was just a limitation in terms of how far you could take the insights that you got from it. To a very large extent, you lean on what you see and what you hear in terms of how to measure whether something is successful. So what are people saying after the event? What am I hearing? So strategic public relations focuses on measurements, uses measurements like attendance, participation, perception, reputation, also carries out surveys and things like that. Traditional PR2 does surveys every now and then. They also rely on focus groups. So, but strategic public relations uses digital and traditional metrics as well together. So AI is also used to measure and to also determine what to measure. Strategic communications, I would say, actually has the highest practice in terms of measurements, very intentional about metrics and measurements. This is an ongoing field where everyone, even us at SA&A, we're still evolving our own way of how to measure success, so in terms of in quantitative and in qualitative terms. AI has been very useful in that space, particularly AI media monitoring tools, AI social listening tools, AI media mention tools, AI sentiment analysis tools, and all of that. So that is used very, very, very strongly in strategic communications. You cannot be saying that you're running a communications plan, an event or a campaign as a communication specialist, and you do not know the kind of tools that are available for either surveys, for media mentions, and all what I've mentioned. So, and one key thing that we do in that space is you have to establish a baseline, develop your KPIs, make sure you know how to gather your data, because if you say you're measuring something, you must already have established a baseline. You already know the keywords you are tracking or the key behaviors that you're looking to have. You have a framework. You already have a performance monitoring and management framework that you've designed before the event or before the campaign launches, so that you can then use that to measure and track as you go along. That's what strategic communications does. I'm not aware that the level of sophistication I will see in how strategic communications, I do not think, definitely that's not been done in traditional PR. Traditional PR, you more or less hear them saying, oh, we cannot quantify the impact of what we do. A lot of what we do is soft, blah, blah, blah. Strategic communications, you can't say that you cannot quantify the impact. Anything you cannot quantify, you will not do it. So it's a different ball game. But that doesn't mean one is better than the other. It's just that the space is different, because in public relations, being present, showing up is enough. And sometimes you cannot quantify the value of showing up, because you're building relationships. But in communications, we're trying to reach and target people from a distance. So it's important that we know, we're able to quantify, recognize, and identify who we're targeting. We're able to recognize we're able to measure where their mindset was, what they were likely to say or do, how they felt about us before we started, targeting them, and did difference afterwards. So that's that. So a lot of use of AI, artificial intelligence, and research monitoring and data analytical tools, and we calculate AI where possible. For me, my tool of choice is Brand24 for media mentions, social listening, and that kind of thing. I guess there are others that are probably as good or better now, but I haven't used. I can only speak for the one that I know. So that's the end of this video: how public relations and communications work together, part 3. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me have your comments. Please don't remember to like, follow, subscribe, whichever platform you're watching this on. If you have any questions, comments, let us know. Respond to us on the platform that you're watching this on, and we look forward to seeing you on our next video. And I did mention we do have courses that run every last Thursday of the month on all of these topics. So if you would like to join one of them, please let us know, and we will get you connected. Also visit learn.sholaabuluassociates.com, learn.sholaabuluassociates.com. That's a learning platform. We have courses available that can be accessed from everywhere in the world, and you can watch. You can go through our courses and come up with the certificates afterwards. We are an accredited training provider, and we have courses on brand strategy, marketing communications, public relations, media and stakeholder management, also issues and crisis management, strategic communications, and one other one that I said. Okay, I think I mentioned all of them right now. So thank you very much, and I see you on the next video. Look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you. I hope this was useful for you. Take care. Bye.